My son David and his wife Lisa stood in my living room, holding a suitcase they had packed for me, and said the words that shattered my world. "Mum, you're moving to Sunny Meadows nursing home today. The doctor says you have dementia." I looked at their determined faces, my own son telling me I was losing my mind. I felt the cold floor under my slippers. I smiled softly and nodded, but inside, I was screaming. I remembered every detail of their expressions. They said the papers were signed, and I had to leave by noon. I knew what I had to do. I needed to act normal until I could find a way to prove they were lying. I was losing my home, the place where I raised David, now being stolen from me. Lisa grabbed my arm, not roughly, but firmly, guiding me toward the door. "It's for your own good," she said, her voice sweet but empty. As we walked out, I noticed David avoiding my eyes. In the car, I pretended to doze, but I listened. They spoke in low voices about a quick sale and clearing debts. My heart pounded. They weren't just putting me away. They were erasing my life to cover their own mistakes. When we arrived at Sunny Meadows, the smell of disinfectant hit me. The place was bleak, with peeling paint and distant cries. A nurse took my suitcase, and David handed her an envelope. "All the documents are in order," he said. I kept my face blank, but my mind was racing. As they left, Lisa whispered, "Be good, Mom." I stood in the hallway alone. Then I saw it. A public phone down the hall. It was old, but it might work. I shuffled toward it, my slippers whispering on the linoleum. I picked up the receiver, my hand trembling. I dialed the number for my lawyer, Mr. Evans. The line clicked, and a voice answered. But it wasn't his secretary. It was a recorded message saying the number was disconnected. I stood frozen by the phone, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. Disconnected. David must have cut off my access to help. A nurse approached, her shoes squeaking on the floor. "Time for your room, dear," she said, taking my elbow. I let her lead me to a small room with a narrow bed and a barred window. The door clicked shut behind her. I was alone, but I knew I was being watched. Now, I had to survive this place and find another way out. I was trapped in this sterile box, my freedom gone. I sat on the bed, the mattress thin and lumpy. Through the window, I saw a neglected garden. Later, during mealtime in the common area, I sat quietly. The food was cold oatmeal. An elderly man across from me muttered about his family never visiting. I nodded, feigning confusion, but I was listening. He mentioned a social worker who came on Tuesdays. Tuesday was tomorrow. That could be my chance. But the pressure was intense. Nurses patrolled constantly, making notes. After lunch, we were herded into the activities room. A staff member handed out crayons and paper. I drew shaky lines, playing the part. Then, a woman beside me, Mrs. Gable, slipped a folded napkin into my hand when no one was looking. I palmed it, my heart racing. Back in my room, I unfolded it. Scrawled in pencil were the words, "Trust no one. They watch everything." I tucked the napkin under my mattress. That night, lying in the dark, I heard a key turn in my door. It wasn't lock-up time yet. The door creaked open slightly, and a shadow fell across the floor. The shadow lingered, then the door closed without anyone entering. My heart hammered against my ribs. Were they testing me? I stayed still, breathing evenly until morning. At breakfast, the oatmeal was even colder. Today, I had to make contact with the social worker. Every moment here chipped away at my spirit. I saw Mrs. Gable across the room. She avoided my gaze. The pressure mounted when a nurse announced that personal items would be inventoried later. They were searching for anything that could prove I was lucid. I needed to hide the napkin note. During a bathroom break, I flushed it down the toilet. Back in the common area, I pretended to doze in a chair. Then, a commotion at the entrance broke the routine. A woman in a crisp suit walked in, the social worker. She introduced herself as Ms. Carter from the county office. My chance had come. But as I stood to approach her, Lisa appeared from the hallway, smiling warmly at Miss Carter. "Thank you for coming to check on Mum," Lisa said, linking arms with me. She has her good days and bad days. Lisa's grip was tight on my arm. Miss Carter nodded, making notes. I forced a vacant smile, but inside, I was screaming again. Lisa led me away, whispering, "Don't cause trouble, Mom." As we walked, I spotted a familiar face in a framed staff photo on the wall. David, shaking hands with the nursing home director. My son had connections here. Ms. Carter left without speaking to me directly. Later, a nurse handed me a pill cup. "For your memory," she said. I pretended to swallow, but when she turned, I spat the pill into my hand. I hid the pill in my pocket, my palm sweaty. The metallic taste lingered in my mouth. I had to find evidence of the forged dementia diagnosis. If caught, they might increase my medication or isolate me further. Nurses checked on me hourly now, the pressure constant. That afternoon, we were taken to the garden for fresh air. The fence was high, but I noticed a gap near a tool shed. Mrs. Gable was there, staring at the ground. I shuffled closer. "The social worker comes every Tuesday," she murmured without looking up. "But she only sees what they show her." I nodded, feigning confusion. A nurse watched us from the doorway. I needed to act fast. Back inside, during a group session, the therapist asked about our families. I babbled nonsense, but I overheard two aides talking in the hallway. "The house sale is going through next week," one said. "Yeah, the son needs the money fast," the other replied. My blood ran cold. Next week. I had to move now. That evening, I was allowed to use the phone again under supervision. I called the number for the bank where I had a safety deposit box. The nurse stood nearby, listening. I asked about my account, pretending to be confused. The bank teller said, "Mrs. Wilkins, your son David is the sole signatory now. He changed it last month." I hung up, my hand shaking. The nurse led me back to my room. As she left, she said, "Sweet dreams?" But her tone was sharp. I lay down, and under my pillow, my fingers brushed against something cold and metallic, a key. It wasn't mine. I clutched the key, its teeth digging into my palm. Where did it come from? I hadn't put it there. I had to find out what it unlocked before someone discovered I had it. If caught with an unauthorized item, they might punish me or move me to a locked ward. The pressure grew. I heard footsteps stopping outside my door multiple times that night. At dawn, I examined the key in the dim light. It was small, like for a locker or a box. During breakfast, I kept it hidden in my sleeve. Mrs. Gable was absent. A nurse said she was unwell. My stomach twisted. Was this a warning? After meals, we had free time in the common area. I noticed a row of lockers for staff near the entrance. One had a rusted lock. Could the key fit? I shuffled over, pretending to look at a bulletin board. The coast was clear for a moment. I slipped the key into the lock. It turned smoothly. Inside, I saw a stack of folders. My hands trembled as I pulled out the top one. It was labeled Wilkins, Margaret, Medical Records. I flipped it open. There, among the papers, was a forged doctor's note diagnosing me with dementia, signed by a Dr. Evans. But I knew Dr. Evans retired years ago. This was the proof I needed. But then a voice behind me said, "Looking for something, Margaret?" I turned to see the head nurse, her arms crossed, blocking my way out. The head nurse stood there, her arms crossed, blocking the path to the hallway. "Looking for something, Margaret?" she repeated, her eyes fixed on the folder in my hands. I forced my fingers to relax, letting the folder droop as if it were heavy. I blinked slowly, putting on my best confused expression. "I was looking for my pictures," I mumbled, gesturing vaguely. "My son David. He has pictures." The nurse sighed, stepping forward and plucking the folder from my grasp. "This is staff property, not for residents," she said firmly. She glanced at the open locker, then back at me. "You shouldn't be touching these things." I nodded, playing the feeble old woman. Inside, I was screaming, but I kept my face blank. She led me back to my room, her grip on my elbow a little too tight. "Stay here until dinner," she ordered, closing the door. I heard the lock click. I was confined again, and I had lost the physical proof. But I had seen enough. The forged signature of Dr. Evans, the date from last month, the letterhead from a clinic I knew had closed years ago. I needed to get that information to someone who could help. Failing now would be more dangerous. They would watch me even closer. I sat on the bed, listening to the sounds of the nursing home. Footsteps passed my door frequently. After a while, I checked my sleeve. The key was still there, tucked away safely. What else could it unlock? Maybe another locker or a desk. I had to find out. Later, a different nurse brought my dinner tray. She seemed kinder, less suspicious. I decided to take a risk. "My back hurts," I said softly. "Can I have a warm compress?" She nodded and left to get one. While she was gone, I quickly scribbled what I remembered about the forgery on a napkin. Dr. Evans' name, the date, the clinic details. I folded it small and hid it in my hand. When the nurse returned, I thanked her and pretended to use the compress. As she left, I slipped the napkin note under my mattress. That night, I lay awake, planning. I needed to get a message to the social worker, Ms. Carter. But how? The phones were monitored and mail was checked. Then I remembered Mrs. Gable. Was she really unwell? I had to find out. The next morning, during breakfast, I asked a nurse about her. "Mrs. Gable was transferred to another facility for specialized care," she said briskly. My heart sank. Was that true, or was it a cover-up? After breakfast, we were taken to the garden. I noticed the tool shed again. The gap in the fence was still there. If I could get out, even for a moment, I could find help. But the risk was immense. If caught, I might be sedated or moved to a locked ward. As I weighed my options, I saw the head nurse watching me from a window. Her expression was unreadable. Then, she gestured for me to come inside. My time in the garden was cut short. Back in my room, I found a small folded piece of paper on my pillow. It wasn't there before. I unfolded it carefully. It read, "The social worker visits tomorrow at 10 a.m. Be in the common area. I will cause a distraction." A friend. I didn't know who wrote it, but it was a lifeline. I memorized the message and flushed the paper down the toilet. Now I had to prepare. But who was this friend? And could I trust them? The next morning, I woke up early, my mind racing. Today was Tuesday, and Ms. Carter was coming at 10 a.m. I had to be ready to speak to her without Lisa or the nurses interfering. Clearly, I had to tell her about the forged documents and David's plan to sell my house. But if I failed, I would lose my last chance at freedom. The pressure was immense. Nurses checked on me every half hour, and I felt eyes on me constantly. During breakfast, I ate slowly, watching the clock. At 9:45, we were herded into the common area, I chose a seat near the entrance where Ms. Carter would likely come in. The head nurse was stationed by the door, her eyes scanning the room. I saw Lisa arrive, smiling and chatting with the staff. She was here to control the narrative. My heart pounded. How could I get a moment alone with the social worker? Then, I remembered the note about a distraction. At exactly 10 a.m., Ms. Carter walked in, carrying a clipboard. Lisa immediately approached her. But suddenly, an alarm blared from the kitchen area. Smoke started billowing out, not real smoke, but from a smoke detector someone had triggered. Everyone turned towards the noise, confused. The head nurse rushed to the kitchen, and Lisa followed, worried. This was my chance. I stood up and shuffled towards Ms. Carter, who was looking around, startled. "Ms. Carter," I said, my voice low but clear. "I need to speak with you. My son and daughter-in-law forged my dementia diagnosis to put me here and sell my house." She looked at me, surprised. "Margaret, but your records show—" I cut her off. "The doctor they named, Dr. Evans, retired 5 years ago. The clinic closed. Check the dates." I spoke quickly, knowing time was short. She frowned, making a note. "I'll look into it," she said. But then the head nurse returned. The alarm stopped, and Lisa was back at her side. "Is everything okay?" Lisa asked, her voice sweet but tense. Ms. Carter nodded. "Just a false alarm. Margaret was just telling me about her family." Lisa shot me a warning look. I smiled vaguely and returned to my seat. The social worker left soon after, promising to follow up. But would she? Later that day, I was called to the head nurse's office. She sat behind her desk, stern-faced. "Margaret, I understand you spoke to Ms. Carter today," she said. "It's important that you don't spread false stories. It could affect your care." I nodded, playing dumb. But as I left, I noticed a file on her desk. It was labeled "Property Sale, Wilkins House." My house. The sale was proceeding. I had to act faster. That evening, I found another note under my pillow. "The key opens the desk in the head nurse's office. Use it at night." My hands trembled. Was this a trap? I held the key tightly in my hand, its metal cool against my skin. The note said it opened the desk in the head nurse's office. If I could get in there, I might find more evidence about the house sale or the forgery. But the office was locked at night, and there were night staff patrolling. Being caught was unthinkable. I could be labeled a troublemaker and isolated completely. The pressure mounted as I heard the evening rounds begin, nurses checking rooms, making sure everyone was in bed. I waited until late, when the sounds died down. Using the key meant I had to leave my room, which was forbidden after lights out. I slowly turned the doorknob. It was unlocked tonight, a rare oversight. I peeked out. The hallway was dim, with only emergency lights on. I crept towards the head nurse's office, my slippers silent on the linoleum. My heart raced with every step. Reaching the office, I tried the door. It was locked. I inserted the key. It turned smoothly. Inside, I closed the door quietly and used the light from the window to see. The desk was neat, with a computer and stacks of files. I started searching, my hands shaking. I found a folder labeled Financial Transactions and opened it. Inside were documents showing transfers from David to the nursing home. Large sums, as if paying for something. Then I saw it. A copy of the house sale agreement, dated for this Friday, only 3 days away. David had signed as my power of attorney, but I never granted him that. This was illegal. I needed to take this with me. But as I reached for it, I heard footsteps approaching. I froze. The doorknob turned. I ducked under the desk, holding my breath. The door opened, and someone entered. It was the head nurse. She walked to the desk, sighed, and picked up the phone. "David, it's me," she said. "She's getting too close. We need to move faster. Yes, the sale is on Friday. Make sure the notary is ready." She paused. "Don't worry. I'll handle Margaret. She won't be a problem much longer." My blood ran cold. She was in on it. After she left, I stayed hidden for a few minutes, then grabbed the sale agreement and slipped out. Back in my room, I hid the papers under my mattress. Now I had proof, but I also knew the head nurse was involved. How could I use this? I had to get it to the authorities outside, but how? The next morning, during breakfast, the head nurse announced that all rooms would be searched for contraband today. They were looking for what I took. The announcement about room searches sent a chill through me. I had the sale agreement hidden under my mattress, and if they found it, all would be lost. Now, I needed to get that document to someone trustworthy outside before the search began. If I failed, I would lose my evidence and face severe consequences, perhaps even being moved to a more restrictive part of the facility. The pressure was immediate. Nurses started the searches room by room, and mine was scheduled for after lunch. I had only a few hours. During morning activities, I pretended to have a headache and asked to lie down. A nurse escorted me to my room but didn't stay. I quickly retrieved the sale agreement and folded it into a small square. Where could I hide it? I thought about the garden shed, or maybe bury it outside, but I couldn't get access easily. Then I remembered the kind nurse from earlier, the one who brought the compress. Her name was Anna, and she seemed sympathetic. I decided to take a risk. I waited until she passed my room on her rounds. "Anna," I whispered, catching her attention. "Can you help me? I need to get this to the police or a lawyer." I showed her the folded paper. Her eyes widened, but she nodded slowly. "I'll try," she said, taking it and slipping it into her pocket. "But be careful, Margaret. They're watching." She hurried away. I felt a glimmer of hope, but now I had to endure the search with nothing incriminating in my room. After lunch, 2 nurses came in and thoroughly searched my belongings, drawers, mattress, everything. They found nothing unusual. The head nurse looked disappointed. "All right, Margaret, you're clean," she said, but her eyes lingered on me. Later that day, Anna didn't show up for her shift. I asked another nurse about her. "Anna transferred to another wing suddenly," was the reply. My heart sank. Had she been caught? Was the document safe? That evening, I received a message through a new aide, a young man who slipped me a note during dinner. It read, "The document is safe. A friend has it. Stay strong." I didn't know who to trust, but I had to believe it was true. The house sale was in 2 days. I needed a plan B. I decided to use the phone again, despite the monitoring. I called the local police non-emergency line, pretending to be confused. "My son is selling my house, and I don't want him to," I said, slurring my words slightly. The dispatcher took down the information but sounded skeptical. "We'll look into it, Ma'am," she said. I hung up, unsure if it would help. As I returned to my room, I saw David and Lisa talking with the head nurse at the entrance. They looked serious. Lisa pointed towards my wing. Were they here to move me? I quickened my pace, but a nurse stopped me. "Margaret, you have visitors," she said. It was David and Lisa. "Mum, we're here to take you out for a little trip," David said, his smile forced, "to see the notary about some papers." This was it. They were taking me to sign over my house. David's words echoed in my ears. A trip to the notary. I knew what that meant. Signing the house sale documents under duress. I had to avoid signing anything or delay it until help arrived. Signing would mean losing my home forever, with no recourse. The pressure was intense. David and Lisa flanked me, guiding me out to their car. The head nurse waved us off, her expression satisfied. In the car, I sat in the back, silent. Lisa turned to me. "Now, Mum, this is just a formality. You want to help us, don't you?" she said, her voice sickly sweet. I nodded slowly, playing along. "Yes, dear," I mumbled. Inside, I was planning. The notary's office was in town, about a 20-minute drive. I needed to cause a scene or find a way to alert someone. As we drove, I noticed David seemed nervous, checking his phone frequently. "The notary is expecting us at 2 p.m., he said to Lisa. "We need to make this quick." I remembered the document Anna might have sent, and my call to the police. Would anyone act in time? We arrived at a small office building. David parked, and they helped me out. Inside, the notary, a stern-looking woman, had papers ready on her desk. "Margaret Wilkins?" she asked. I nodded. "Please sign here," she said, pointing to a line. David handed me a pen. My hand shook as I took it. I pretended to struggle with the pen, dropping it. "I'm sorry, my hands are stiff," I said, buying time. Lisa sighed impatiently. The notary picked up the pen and gave it back to me. "Just make your mark, dear," she said. I looked at the paper. It was the sale agreement, with David listed as the seller. I couldn't sign this. Suddenly, the office door opened, and a man in a suit walked in. "I'm from Adult Protective Services," he said, showing a badge. "We received a report about possible elder coercion. This signing needs to be halted until we investigate." David turned pale. "What? This is ridiculous!" he shouted. The notary looked confused but stepped back. The APS man turned to me. "Margaret, are you here willingly?" I looked at him, then at David and Lisa. "No," I said clearly. "They forged my dementia diagnosis to put me in a home and sell my house." Lisa gasped. David started arguing, but the APS man held up his hand. "We'll need to verify this. Margaret, you'll come with me for now." Relief washed over me, but as we left the office, I saw David on the phone, his face angry. He was calling someone, probably the head nurse. The fight wasn't over yet. As I got into the APS car, I wondered who had sent them. Was it Anna? The friend? I didn't know, but for now I was safe. But David and Lisa wouldn't give up easily. The APS man drove me to a small beige office building downtown. He introduced himself as Mr. Henderson and led me to a quiet room with a sofa and a water cooler. "You're safe here for now, Margaret," he said. "We've placed a temporary hold on the house sale, and we're reviewing your case." I sat on the sofa, my hands still trembling. I needed immediately to secure my freedom and stop the sale permanently. But I knew David and Lisa wouldn't give up. They needed that money. If I failed, the consequences were unthinkable. Being sent back to Sunny Meadows, or worse, declared incompetent. Mr. Henderson asked me questions about the forged documents and my son's actions. I told him everything, clearly and calmly, about the fake Dr. Evans' signature, the closed clinic, and the head nurse's involvement. He took notes, his expression serious. "We'll need to obtain your medical records independently," he said, "and we'll contact the banking authorities about the power of attorney." I felt a flicker of hope. But then his phone buzzed. He looked at it and frowned. "I have to take this," he said, stepping out of the room. I waited, sipping water from a paper cup. The room was quiet, too quiet. Through the window, I saw a familiar car pull into the parking lot, David's car. My heart jumped. How did he find me so quickly? Mr. Henderson came back in, his face strained. "Margaret, there's a complication," he said. "Your son has provided additional documentation from a new physician stating that you are prone to confabulation, making up stories due to your condition." He showed me a paper with a letterhead from a Dr. Miles, a name I didn't recognize. "He's requesting an emergency guardianship hearing tomorrow morning." The situation was getting worse. David was using the system against me, creating new lies faster than I could expose the old ones. I had to prove this new doctor was fake too. But how? From here? Mr. Henderson seemed sympathetic, but bound by procedure. "I'm afraid I have to place you in temporary protective custody at a county facility until the hearing," he said. "It's standard protocol." My freedom was slipping away again. As he prepared the paperwork, I noticed a familiar face through the door crack, the head nurse from Sunny Meadows, talking to someone in the hallway. She was here. They had connections everywhere. Just as Mr. Henderson was about to lead me out, his assistant came in with a message. "Sir, a lawyer is here to see Margaret Wilkins. He says it's urgent." Mr. Henderson looked surprised. "Who is it?" The assistant replied, "A Mr. Evans. He says he's her former attorney." My breath caught. Mr. Evans? But he was retired, and his number was disconnected. This couldn't be him. Was this another trick? A man walked into the room, and I barely recognized him. It was Mr. Evans, but he looked older, frailer than I remembered. He carried a worn leather briefcase. "Margaret," he said, his voice raspy but firm. "I heard what's been happening." Mr. Henderson seemed skeptical. "You're her lawyer? Her son said you were unavailable." Mr. Evans nodded. "I am retired, but Margaret is an old client. When I heard about the forgery using my name, I had to step in." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a file. "This is my official retirement notice from the State Bar, dated over 5 years ago. Any document bearing my signature after that is fraudulent." He handed it to Mr. Henderson. My hope surged. This was the proof I needed. Now, I had to use this to discredit David's new documents and stop the guardianship hearing. If we failed, David could still gain control over me and my assets. They weren't letting up. David and the head nurse were outside, probably plotting their next move. Mr. Evans turned to me. "Margaret, we need to act fast. The hearing is tomorrow at 9 a.m. We must file a counter-petition and present this evidence." Mr. Henderson, now convinced, agreed to help facilitate. He allowed me to stay in a supervised apartment for the night instead of the county facility, with a social worker checking in. It was a small victory, but I wasn't free yet. Later, at the apartment, a simple studio with a kitchenette, I tried to rest. But my mind raced. Who had contacted Mr. Evans? Was it the friend from Sunny Meadows? I needed to find out. The social worker, a young woman named Chloe, brought me dinner. She seemed kind. "Is there anything you need, Margaret?" she asked. I decided to trust her. "Do you know how Mr. Evans found me?" I said. She shook her head. "No, but he mentioned a tip from a nurse at Sunny Meadows. Someone named Anna." "Anna? The nurse who took my document?" So she was safe, and she had acted. I felt a wave of gratitude. But the battle wasn't over. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about David, my own son. How did he become this person? I remembered him as a little boy, helping me in the garden. Now he was trying to bury me in paperwork and lies. The next morning, Chloe drove me to the courthouse for the hearing. It was a small wood-paneled room. David and Lisa were already there, with a lawyer I didn't recognize. The head nurse was in the audience too. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, called the session to order. David's lawyer presented the new documents from Dr. Miles, arguing for emergency guardianship. Then Mr. Evans stood up. Your Honour, we have evidence that the initial dementia diagnosis was forged, and the physician named has been retired for years. He presented the retirement notice. The judge examined it. David shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Then his lawyer spoke up. We have a witness, the director of Sunny Meadows, who can attest to Margaret's declining condition and her son's concern. The director was called to the stand. He testified about my confusion and agitation. But under Mr. Evans' cross-examination, he admitted that David had made significant donations to the facility recently. The judge's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, the head nurse stood up. Your Honour, may I speak? She said. I have information about Margaret's true mental state. The judge allowed it. She walked to the front, but instead of testifying against me, she turned to David. I can't do this anymore, David. You pressured me to falsify records, and I won't lie for you again. The room fell silent. David's face went white. The head nurse had turned on him. The head nurse's confession echoed in the quiet courtroom. David Wilkins promised me a share from the house sale if I helped keep his mother confined and supported the false diagnosis, she said, her voice steady but low. I have text messages and bank transfers to prove it. She handed her phone to the judge's clerk. My heart pounded. This was the break I needed. Now, with her testimony, we could expose the entire scheme and clear my name completely. But David looked furious, and I knew he wouldn't go down without a fight. If I made a wrong move now, the danger was still high. If the judge doubted anything, I could be stuck in legal limbo. The tension was palpable. David's lawyer objected loudly, but the judge overruled him, reviewing the evidence. Mr. Evans presented the forged medical records and the house sale agreement I had stolen. The judge listened intently, her expression growing sterner. After a recess, she delivered her ruling. Based on the evidence presented, I find that Margaret Wilkins is of sound mind, and that her son David Wilkins has engaged in fraudulent and coercive practices. The emergency guardianship petition is denied. Furthermore, I am issuing a temporary restraining order against David and Lisa Wilkins, barring them from contacting Margaret or conducting any transactions on her behalf. Relief washed over me, but it was not over yet. The judge also referred the case to the district attorney for possible criminal charges. As we left the courtroom, David glared at me, but he didn't speak. Lisa was crying. Mr. Evans escorted me out. You're free, Margaret, he said. But we need to secure your home and finances immediately. My house was still in my name, but David had likely accessed my accounts. We went to my bank, where Mr. Evans helped me revoke any power of attorney and freeze my assets. The bank manager was apologetic and cooperative once we showed the court order. Then, we drove to my house. It felt strange returning after weeks away. The garden was overgrown, and the mail was piled up. Inside, everything was as I left it. But I noticed a few things were out of place. Documents on the kitchen table, as if David had been searching for something. Mr. Evans helped me change the locks and set up a security system. You should be safe here now, but be cautious, he advised. I thanked him, and he left. Alone in my home, I felt a deep exhaustion, but also a simmering anger. David had tried to destroy my life. He needed to face consequences beyond the legal ones. I wanted him to understand what he had done. That evening, I sorted through the mail. Among the bills and junk, I found a letter from a loan company addressed to David. It was a default notice demanding payment for a large debt. So that was why he needed the money so desperately. Criminal debts, as I had suspected. I set it aside. Then, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Margaret, it's Anna, the nurse from Sunny Meadows, the voice said. I'm glad you're safe. I wanted to tell you that the head nurse confessed because she found out David was cheating her too. He promised her more money than he intended to pay. I thanked her for her bravery. After hanging up, I thought about my next move. The legal system would handle the criminal side, but I needed personal closure. I decided to write David a letter, not out of anger, but to make him see the truth. As I sat at my desk, I heard a car pull up outside. I looked out the window. It was a taxi, and David was getting out, alone. He walked up to my porch, but the new locks kept him out. He rang the doorbell, his face pleading. I didn't answer. He started shouting, Mom, please, I need to talk to you. They're going to hurt me if I don't pay. I stayed silent, watching him through the peephole. He kicked the door in frustration, then got back in the taxi and left. I knew then that he hadn't changed. He was only sorry he got caught. But I also knew I had one more thing to do to protect myself fully. I needed to rewrite my will, ensuring David would never inherit anything from me. I called Mr. Evans to schedule a meeting for the next day. As I hung up, I noticed a small, familiar item on my hallway table. The key from Sunny Meadows. I had forgotten it was in my pocket. How did it get there? I didn't remember placing it on the table. The key on my hallway table sent a chill down my spine. I was certain I had left it in the pocket of my housecoat, which was now in the laundry basket. Someone had been in my house and placed it there. Was it a warning? A message? What I needed now was to finalize my new will and ensure my safety. But this intrusion meant I wasn't as secure as I thought. If David or someone else could get in, they might try to sabotage my plans or harm me. If I wasn't careful, I could lose everything I had just regained. I checked all the windows and doors. They were locked. The security system was armed. How did they get in? I remembered that David had a key from before, but I changed the locks, unless he made a copy beforehand. I called the security company to double-check the system logs, but they found no breaches. This was unsettling. The next morning, I met with Mr. Evans at his office to draft the new will. I decided to leave my estate to a local charity for seniors, with a small trust for any future grandchildren, bypassing David completely. Mr. Evans prepared the documents, and I signed them with 2 witnesses present. This is legally solid now, he said. But Margaret, are you sure? Sometimes families reconcile. I shook my head. Not this time, I said firmly. As I left his office, I felt a sense of closure, but the key still bothered me. On my way home, I stopped at a hardware store and bought additional window locks and a doorbell camera. I installed them myself, my hands steady despite my age. I was taking back control. That afternoon, the doorbell camera alerted me. I checked the video feed on my phone. It was Lisa, standing on my porch, alone. She looked nervous. I didn't answer. She left a note in the mailbox and walked away. After she was gone, I retrieved the note. It read, Mum, I'm sorry. I want to explain. Can we talk? I'll be at the park bench near the lake at 4 p.m. today. I was skeptical. Was this a genuine apology or a trick? I decided to go, but with precautions. I called Chloe, the social worker, and asked her to accompany me discreetly. She agreed. At the park, I sat on the bench. Lisa arrived shortly, her eyes red from crying. Mum, I'm so sorry, she began. I was wrong to go along with David. I was scared of him too. He has debts to dangerous people, and he threatened to leave me if I didn't help. She explained that David had gotten involved with loan sharks after a failed business venture. and the pressure had made him desperate. She claimed she wanted out and was seeking divorce. I listened, but I didn't fully trust her. "Why should I believe you?" I asked. She handed me a USB drive. "This has recordings of David talking with the head nurse and the forger. I was gathering evidence to protect myself." I took it, unsure. Just then, Chloe approached, and Lisa quickly left. Later, at home, I reviewed the files on the USB. They were indeed audio recordings of David discussing the forgery and the sale. This was more evidence for the authorities. But I wondered why Lisa really gave it to me. Was she truly remorseful, or was she covering herself? That evening, I received a call from Mr. Henderson at APS. "Margaret, we've completed our investigation. The district attorney is filing charges against David, the head nurse, and the forger. Your case is strong." I thanked him and felt a weight lift. But as I prepared for bed, I noticed something else out of place. A photo frame on my mantel was tilted slightly. I straightened it, and behind it, I found a small wireless camera. Someone had been watching me inside my own home. I removed the battery, my hands trembling. This wasn't David's style. He was never this tech-savvy. Who else was involved? The discovery of the hidden camera in my home made my blood run cold. This was beyond David. He never cared for gadgets. Someone else was monitoring me, and I needed to find out who and why. My first priority was to secure my home completely and identify this new threat. If I failed, my privacy and safety were at risk, and any legal victory could be undermined. The tension was mounting again. I felt watched even now. I called a security expert recommended by Mr. Evans to sweep the house for more devices. While waiting, I reviewed the audio files from Lisa's USB drive. One recording stood out. David talking to a man named Victor about ensuring the old lady doesn't cause more trouble. Victor's voice was cold, professional. Was he the lone shark? This added a new layer of danger. The security expert, a young man named Ben, arrived and found two more cameras, one in the living room and one in the bedroom. He also discovered a GPS tracker attached to my car. "This is sophisticated stuff," Ben said. "Whoever did this has resources." I thought of Victor. Ben removed all the devices and installed a more advanced security system with jammers. "You should be safe now, but be vigilant," he advised. After he left, I felt paranoid but determined. I needed to deal with Victor. But how? I couldn't confront him directly. Instead, I decided to use the evidence I had. I made copies of the USB files and the new findings and anonymously mailed them to the district attorney's office, along with Victor's name. Let the authorities handle him. The next few days were quiet. I focused on rebuilding my life, tending my garden, reconnecting with old friends. I even visited Mrs. Gable, who had been moved to a much nicer assisted living facility. She was grateful for my help and confirmed that the friend who helped me was an aide named Jake, who had since left Sunny Meadows. I felt a sense of community, of justice, slowly being served. Then, I received a letter from the district attorney. David had been arrested and charged with fraud, coercion, and conspiracy. The head nurse and the forger were also in custody. They were negotiating pleas. The house was fully back in my name, and my finances were secure. It was over, legally, but emotionally it wasn't. I still felt a hollow ache for the son I had lost. One afternoon I was in my garden, planting new flowers, when a car pulled up. It was Lisa, alone again. She approached slowly, holding a small box. "I'm moving away, Mom," she said. "I wanted to give you this." She handed me the box. Inside were old family photos and a locket I had given her when she married David. I am sorry, she said, and she seemed genuine this time. I nodded. I hope you find peace, I told her. She left, and I never saw her again. As for David, I heard through Mr. Evans that he took a plea deal and was sentenced to prison. I didn't attend the sentencing. Some breaks are too deep to mend. Now, in my quiet home, I tend my garden and volunteer at the local senior centre, helping others who might be in similar situations. I have my freedom, my home, and my peace, and that is enough. A thick envelope arrived in my mailbox, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with bold print. David Wilkins owes $50,000. You have 1 week to pay, or we take the house. It was signed, Victor. My hands shook as I held it. This was David's debt, now coming for me. I had to protect my home and my hard-won freedom. If I failed, I could lose everything I fought for, back to square one. The pressure was immediate. I felt watched again, even with my new security system. I called Mr. Evans, but he was on vacation. I was on my own for now. I decided not to pay. That would only invite more demands. Instead, I needed to gather evidence and go to the police. But Victor knew where I lived, and he had already proven he could infiltrate my home. Later that day, while volunteering at the senior centre, I mentioned the threat to the director, Mrs. Pierce. She listened carefully and said, "We've had similar issues here. There's a pattern with certain lenders targeting seniors through their families." She gave me a name, Officer Miller at the local police, who handled financial crimes against the elderly. I called him and explained the situation. He advised me to bring the letter to the station. As I was leaving the centre, I noticed a dark car parked across the street, its engine running. I hurried home, my heart racing. Back inside, I checked my security cameras. The car had followed me, but it drove off before I could get the license plate. That evening, I received a phone call. A raspy voice said, "1 week, Margaret. Don't make this difficult." Then, a click. I froze. How did he get my number? I had it changed after the nursing home ordeal. I realized my privacy was still compromised. I needed to find out how Victor was connected and stop him for good. The next morning, I went through David's old things in the attic, looking for clues. In a box of his papers, I found a loan agreement with Victor's name and a phone number. There was also a receipt for a pawn shop downtown. I decided to visit the pawn shop, pretending to be David's mother looking for a missing item. The shop was cluttered and dim. The owner, a gruff man named Joe, was hesitant to talk. But when I mentioned Victor, his expression changed. "I don't want trouble," he muttered. I pressed gently, and he revealed that Victor often used his shop to launder money and secure loans. He gave me an address, an office building in the industrial part of town. I thanked him and left. As I walked to my car, I saw the same dark car from earlier. It pulled away quickly. I had a lead, but I was being followed. When I got home, I found my front door slightly ajar. Someone had been inside again. The open door sent a chill through me. I stepped inside cautiously, my heart pounding. Nothing seemed stolen, but on my kitchen table lay another note. "Time is running out. 3 days." It was from Victor. I needed to act fast now, use the address from the pawn shop to find Victor and gather evidence for the police. If I delayed, he might escalate, perhaps even force me out of my home. The pressure was intensifying. I knew he was watching my every move. I called Officer Miller and reported the break-in and the new note. He said he would look into it, but advised me to stay away from Victor's location. But I couldn't just wait. I decided to drive to the industrial area and scout the address, but not alone. I asked Ben, the security expert, to accompany me discreetly. He agreed to meet me nearby. The building was a run-down warehouse with a small office entrance. I parked a block away and watched through binoculars. Ben arrived in his own car and did a quick perimeter check. He noted a few cameras and a steady flow of people going in and out. "This looks like a front for something," he whispered. We saw a man matching Victor's description from Lisa's recordings, tall, bald, wearing a suit, enter the building. I took photos with my phone. Suddenly, a woman exited and walked toward my car. I ducked, but she knocked on my window. "Margaret Wilkins," she said. I rolled down the window slightly. "Victor wants to talk. Now." I hesitated, but Ben signaled to play along. I got out and followed her inside, with Ben watching from a distance. The office was sparse, with a desk and 2 chairs. Victor sat there, smiling coldly. "I see you're a stubborn woman," he said. "But this debt is legal. David signed over the house as collateral." He showed me a document, a loan agreement with David's signature and a clause about the house. My blood ran cold. It looked legitimate, but I knew David had no right to sign that. I kept calm. "David had no authority to use my house," I said. Victor laughed. "The courts might see it differently. Pay up, or I foreclose." I left, feeling defeated but angry. On the drive home, Ben called. I recorded the conversation with a hidden device. We have him admitting to the threat. "But Margaret, there's more." I ran a background check. Victor is connected to several complaints, but he's careful. He uses legal loopholes. When I arrived home, I found a package on my porch. Inside was a dead flower and a note. 2 days. But tucked under the flower was a small USB drive. I plugged it in. It contained files showing Victor's operations, including falsified documents and witness statements. It was from an anonymous source, maybe someone inside wanting out. I had the evidence, but now Victor knew I had it. The USB drive contained everything I needed to bring Victor down: records of illegal loans, forged signatures, and even videos of intimidation tactics. I had to get this to the police immediately, before Victor could retaliate. If I succeeded, I could end this threat for good. If not, he might destroy the evidence or harm me. The pressure was extreme. I received another call from Victor, his voice furious. "You shouldn't have snooped around, Margaret. Now, things get messy." I called Officer Miller and arranged to meet him at the station in 1 hour. I copied the files to multiple devices and hid them around the house. Just as I was about to leave, my doorbell rang. It was a delivery man with a bouquet, another threat disguised as a gift. I refused it and drove to the police station. Officer Miller reviewed the files and was shocked. "This is solid evidence. We can get a warrant for Victor's operations right away." He started the process, but warned me that Victor might have allies in the system. I felt a glimmer of hope. On my way home, I stopped at the senior center to update Mrs. Pierce. She was grateful and shared that other seniors had been victimized by similar schemes. We decided to start a support group. As I left, I saw the dark car again, but this time it followed me closely. I drove to a busy supermarket and lost it in the parking lot. Back home, I reinforced my security, but that night I heard noises outside. Footsteps, and then a crash. I checked the cameras. Someone had thrown a brick through my living room window. The note attached read, "Last warning." I called the police, and they sent a car to patrol the area. I couldn't sleep, so I sorted through the USB files again. One video showed Victor talking to a man I recognized, the notary from the attempted house sale. They were discussing how to forge documents for other seniors. This was bigger than I thought. The next morning, Officer Miller called. We executed the warrant early. Victor is in custody, and we've seized his records. You're safe now, Margaret. I sighed in relief. But then, he added, however, we found something concerning. Victor had a list of other targets, and your name was on it. But so was someone else's. A Jane Doe from the nursing home. We think it's connected to Sunny Meadows. My relief turned to worry. Who was Jane Doe, and why was she on the list? I remembered Mrs. Gable and others. I needed to find out if there were more victims. I visited Mrs. Gable at her new facility. She was doing well, but when I mentioned Victor, she paled. He was the one who funded the shady deals at Sunny Meadows, she whispered. The head nurse was working for him. This wasn't over yet. As I left, I received a text from an unknown number. You didn't think it was that easy, did you? The network is bigger? It was signed, a friend. But the tone was different. The text message chilled me. The network is bigger. Victor was in custody, but someone else was still out there, connected to the nursing home scheme. I had to uncover this network and protect other seniors from being exploited. If I didn't, more people could lose their homes and freedom, and I might be targeted again. The pressure was subtle but persistent. I felt a sense of being watched return, even with Victor gone. I called Officer Miller and told him about the text and Mrs. Gable's information. He said the investigation was ongoing and they were looking into ties between Victor and other facilities. But I knew I had to do more. I decided to use my experience to help others proactively. I started the support group at the senior center, sharing my story and encouraging others to speak up. At the first meeting, several people came forward with similar tales of fraud and coercion. One man, Mr. Higgins, said his grandson had tried to sell his car without permission, using forged papers. Another woman, Mrs. Lee, had been tricked into signing over her savings. We compiled a list of incidents and gave it to Officer Miller. He was appreciative and promised action. Meanwhile, I looked into Jane Doe from Victor's list. With Mrs. Pierce's help, I accessed public records and found a Jane Doe who had been a resident at Sunny Meadows but was transferred to a state facility after a mental decline. I visited the facility, posing as a relative. The staff was hesitant, but I persisted and learned that Jane was actually a woman named Eleanor Grant, who had no family and had been declared incompetent based on forged documents. She was completely lucid when I spoke to her. She told me that the head nurse at Sunny Meadows had arranged her transfer after she overheard conversations about Victor. I recorded her statement and gave it to the police. This was evidence of a wider conspiracy. As I was leaving the facility, I saw a familiar face, the head nurse's assistant from Sunny Meadows, who had been kind to me. She approached me nervously. "I need to talk," she said. "My name is Sarah. I was forced to help with the forgeries, but I want to make it right. There are more people involved, including a lawyer who specializes in elder law and helps fabricate documents." She gave me a name, Attorney Grossman. I thanked her and promised protection. Back home, I felt a sense of purpose. But that evening, my doorbell camera captured someone lurking outside, a man I didn't recognize. He left an envelope on the porch. Inside was a legal notice, a lawsuit from Attorney Grossman, claiming I was defaming him and demanding a retraction. He was striking back. I called Mr. Evans, who was back from vacation. He advised me to ignore it for now and gather more evidence, but the pressure was on. I knew I had to expose Grossman without getting sued. I went through my files and found a connection. Grossman had notarized some of David's forged documents. I had him. But as I prepared to send this to the police, I received another text. Stop digging, or Eleanor Grant suffers. They knew I was helping her. The threat against Eleanor Grant made my blood boil. They were using an innocent woman to silence me. I had to protect Eleanor and expose Grossman without putting her in danger. If I failed, she could be harmed, and the network would continue to operate. The pressure was direct and personal. I felt responsible for Eleanor's safety. I immediately called the state facility and warned them about the threat. They increased security and moved Eleanor to a safer room. Then, I contacted Officer Miller with all the evidence against Grossman, including Sarah's testimony and the notarized documents. He said they could pursue it, but it would take time. I couldn't wait. I decided to confront Grossman myself, but with backup. I arranged to meet him at his office under the pretense of discussing a legal matter. Ben accompanied me, waiting outside. Grossman's office was lavish, with mahogany furniture and expensive art. He was a smooth-talking man in his 50s. "Margaret, so good to see you," he said, smiling falsely. "I hope we can clear up this misunderstanding." I played along, recording the conversation secretly. I asked about his involvement with Sunny Meadows and Victor. He denied everything, but I mentioned the notarized forgeries. His smile faded. "You have no proof," he said. Just then, Ben texted me. "Police are here." I called them. Officer Miller walked in with a warrant for Grossman's arrest based on the new evidence. Grossman's face turned white. As he was handcuffed, he glared at me. "This isn't over. There are others higher up." I left, feeling victorious but uneasy. His words haunted me. Who were the others? Back home, I checked on Eleanor through the facility. She was safe and grateful. I also heard from Mr. Evans that the lawsuit was dropped due to Grossman's arrest. For now, I had won. But that night, as I sorted through my mail, I found a handwritten letter with no postmark. It was delivered by hand. It read, "You're making a lot of enemies, Margaret, but you have friends too. Meet me at the community garden tomorrow at noon. Come alone." It was signed, "A Well-Wisher." I didn't know what to think. Was this another trap or genuine help? I decided to go, but with precautions. I asked Ben to watch from a distance. The next day, at the garden, an elderly man I had never seen before approached me. He introduced himself as Henry, a retired judge who had been investigating corruption in elder care for years. "I've been watching you, Margaret," he said. "You've done more in months than I have in years. But the network is deep, with connections in local government and healthcare. I have information, but I need your help to bring it down." He handed me a folder full of documents linking several officials to the schemes. This was bigger than I imagined. As I took the folder, I noticed a woman across the garden, watching us intently. She quickly turned away, but I recognized her. She was from the district attorney's office. Were they involved too? Henry saw my expression. "We have to be careful," he whispered. "They're everywhere." I left the meeting with the folder, my mind racing. I had to decide whether to trust Henry and dive deeper into this conspiracy or step back and protect myself. But as I walked to my car, I saw the woman from the DA's office getting into a car with government plates. She nodded at me, almost imperceptibly. What did that mean? I got in my car and opened the folder. The first document was a list of names, including some I knew from the news. At the bottom was a note. "Your son David was just a pawn. The real players are still free." My hands trembled. This was far from over. I sat in my car, the folder from Henry heavy on my lap. The first page listed names I recognized from the news: a city councilman, a hospital administrator, even a judge. My son David was just a pawn in this, used by people with power. I had to verify this information quickly and decide if I could trust Henry or if this was a trap. If I stepped into this, I risked everything I had rebuilt: my home, my peace, even my life. The pressure was immediate. I saw the woman from the DA's office drive away, and I felt exposed. I drove home, checking my mirrors often. No one followed, but the unease stayed. At home, I spread the documents on my kitchen table. There were bank records, emails, and signed agreements showing how officials took bribes to overlook fraud in nursing homes and legal guardianships. One name stood out: Councilman Briggs, who had championed elder rights publicly but privately profited from their exploitation. I needed to confirm this before acting. I called Mr. Evans, but his line was busy. I tried Officer Miller, but he was in a meeting. I was on my own for now. I decided to cross-reference the documents with public records online. After hours of searching, I found a match: a donation from a shell company linked to Briggs, to the campaign of the judge on the list. This was real. But as I saved the evidence, my computer screen flickered and went black. A power surge? I reset it, but it wouldn't start. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, but no one spoke, just breathing. Then a click. I unplugged the computer, my hands shaking. This was a warning. I packed the documents into a bag to take to a safe place. But where? I thought of the senior centre. Mrs. Pierce might help. As I headed to the door, my doorbell camera alerted me. I checked the feed. A delivery man with a package. I didn't order anything. I stayed silent. He left the package and walked away. I waited, then retrieved it. Inside was a single dead rose and a note: "Stop now, or you'll regret it." But tucked in the thorns was a tiny USB drive. I plugged it into my old laptop. It contained a video: Henry talking to someone, but the audio was muffled. I couldn't tell if he was trustworthy or not. Then I noticed a file named "Read Me." I opened it. It was a message: "Henry is who he says, but they know you have the folder. Destroy it, or use it fast." I didn't know who sent this, but time was running out. I had to make a choice: back down or fight back with everything I had. I looked at the names on the list, thinking of all the seniors like Eleanor. I couldn't let this go. I called Ben to arrange a secure meeting. As I hung up, I heard a car pull up outside. I peeked through the window. It was a black sedan with tinted windows. The engine stayed running. The black sedan idled outside my house for 10 minutes, then drove off slowly. My heart pounded. I had to act now. Get the evidence to someone who could use it without putting myself in more danger. If I delayed, they might raid my home or harm me. The pressure was intense. I felt like a target in my own sanctuary. I called Ben and explained the situation. He suggested we meet at a public place, the library, where we could use their secure computers to copy and send the files anonymously. I agreed and packed the folder and USB drives into my bag. Before leaving, I hid a copy of the documents in a hidden compartment in my attic, just in case. I drove to the library, taking a circuitous route to ensure I wasn't followed. The library was quiet, with few people around. Ben was already there, at a computer terminal in the back. We started uploading the files to a secure cloud storage account he set up, and we prepared to send them to multiple news outlets and law enforcement agencies. But as we worked, I noticed a man in a suit browsing shelves nearby, watching us in the reflection of a glass case. I nudged Ben, and he subtly redirected the screen. We finished the uploads and sent the emails with the evidence. Just as we were about to leave, the man approached us. "Margaret Wilkins," he said. "I'm with the district attorney's office. We need to talk about the documents you have." I hesitated, remembering the woman from the garden. Was this genuine or a trick? Ben stepped in. "Do you have identification?" The man showed a badge. It looked real, but I was cautious. He said, "We're investigating the corruption you uncovered. We need your cooperation." I agreed to speak, but only at the police station with Officer Miller present. He nodded, and we arranged to meet there in an hour. After he left, Ben and I discussed it. "This could be a setup," Ben warned. "But if it's real, it's our best shot." I drove to the police station, alone this time. Officer Miller was waiting, and the DA's man was there too. They confirmed they had received the files and were acting on them. But then, Officer Miller pulled me aside. "Margaret, be careful. Some in the DA's office are compromised. We're not sure who to trust." My stomach tightened. Back home, I felt a temporary relief. But that night, I received a text from Henry. "They took my wife. They said if I talk, she dies. I'm sorry, I have to disappear." The message ended abruptly. I tried calling him, but his phone was off. Now I was more alone than ever, and the stakes were higher. I had to find a way to protect Henry's wife and keep the pressure on. But how? I looked at the list of names again. One was a powerful banker who handled the funds. If I could expose him, it might break the chain. I decided to visit the bank in the morning, pretending to be a customer. As I planned, my doorbell rang. It was late. I checked the camera. No one was there, but a envelope lay on the porch. I opened it carefully. Inside was a photo of Henry's wife, tied to a chair, with a note. "Next time it's you." The photo of Henry's wife, terrified and bound, made my blood run cold. I had to rescue her and expose the banker to dismantle this network. But doing so could get us both killed. If I failed, an innocent woman would suffer, and the corruption would continue. The pressure was overwhelming. I knew I was being watched, and any wrong move could be fatal. I called Officer Miller immediately and showed him the photo. He was alarmed and said he would escalate it to the FBI, as this was now a kidnapping. But he warned that local resources might be tied up, and it could take time. I couldn't wait. I remembered the banker's name from the list. Richard Thorne, from First City Bank. I decided to visit his branch first thing in the morning, using a pretext to get information. I didn't sleep that night, pacing my house, checking the cameras every few minutes. At dawn, I dressed neatly and drove to the bank. It was a large, imposing building downtown. I asked to speak with Mr. Thorne about a large donation I wanted to make to a senior charity, hoping to lure him into a conversation. I was led to his office, a luxurious room with a view of the city. Thorne was a polished man in his 50s, with a smooth smile. "How can I help you, Mrs. Wilkins?" he asked. I mentioned the donation and casually brought up Sunny Meadows, watching his reaction. His smile tightened. "I'm not familiar with that facility," he said, but I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. I pressed on, talking about elder fraud, and he became defensive. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. He looked at it and paled. "I have to take this," he said, and he hurried out. I waited, but he didn't return. After a few minutes, I left, feeling I had stirred something. As I walked to my car, my phone rang. It was Ben. "Margaret, I traced the photo sent to you. It's from an abandoned warehouse on the east side. I think that's where they're holding Henry's wife." I drove to meet Ben, and we called the police from a safe distance. We watched the warehouse from his car. Soon, police cars arrived, and we saw them enter. After what felt like hours, Officer Miller came out and waved us over. "We found her," he said. "She's safe, a bit shaken but unharmed. But the kidnappers got away." Henry's wife, Clara, was brought out, and she hugged me, crying. "Thank you," she whispered. Henry was trying to do the right thing. I felt a surge of hope. But as we drove away, Ben noticed something. "Margaret, look at this." He showed me a photo he took from the warehouse, a ledger with transactions linked to Thorne's bank. We had more evidence. But when I got home, there was a message on my answering machine. "You saved one, but there are others. Back off, or next time, it won't be a warning." The voice was distorted, but I knew the threat was real. I had to decide: push forward with the bank evidence or retreat to safety. I looked at Clara's grateful face in my mind and knew I couldn't stop now. The threat on my answering machine echoed in my ears, but I couldn't back down now. I had to use the ledger from the warehouse to expose Richard Thorne and the bank's role in the corruption. If I succeeded, I could cripple their financial operations. If I failed, I might not survive another warning. The pressure was mounting. I felt eyes on me everywhere I went. I met with Officer Miller and Ben to plan our next move. We decided to take the ledger directly to the federal authorities, bypassing any potentially compromised local channels. Officer Miller had a contact in the FBI who specialized in financial crimes. We arranged a meeting at a secure location, a federal building in the next city. I drove there with Ben, the ledger safely in my bag. The FBI agent, Agent Carter, was a no-nonsense woman who listened intently as we presented the evidence. She confirmed that the ledger showed illegal transfers between Thorne's bank and several shell companies linked to the officials on the list. "This is substantial," she said. "We can get warrants for Thorne's records and freeze the accounts." She started the process immediately. On the drive back, I felt a sense of accomplishment, but Ben was quiet. "What's wrong?" I asked. He sighed. "I'm worried about retaliation. These people have a lot to lose." When I arrived home, I found my front door slightly ajar again. I entered cautiously, but nothing seemed disturbed. However, on my coffee table was a single sheet of paper. It was a printout of an email between Thorne and Councilman Briggs, discussing silencing the old woman. It was dated from today. They were planning something against me. I called Agent Carter and reported it. She advised me to stay somewhere else for a few days. I packed a bag and went to a hotel using a false name that Ben arranged. That night, in the sterile hotel room, I thought about how far this had gone. From my son's betrayal to a web of corruption, it was overwhelming. But I remembered Eleanor Grant and Mrs. Gable, and I knew I had to see it through. The next morning, I saw on the news that Richard Thorne had been arrested by the FBI and accounts were frozen. It was a major breakthrough. I felt relieved, but then my phone rang. It was Mr. Evans. "Margaret, I have news. The district attorney is resigning amid the scandal, and several others are under investigation. You've done it." I thanked him, but I knew it wasn't over yet. The system was cleaning itself, but the roots were deep. I decided to return home, but as I checked out of the hotel, I received a text from an unknown number. "The big one is still free, the one who started it all." It was from Henry. He was safe now with his wife. I replied, "Who?" The response came quickly. "Dr. Miles, the forger. He's not just a doctor. He's the mastermind." Dr. Miles was the name on the fake diagnosis David used. I had thought he was a small player, but he was the key. I needed to find him and bring him down. But how? I had no idea where he was. As I drove home, I realized I had one more battle to fight. When I arrived, my house was surrounded by news vans. Reporters wanted to talk to me about the exposé. I smiled and waved them away, but inside, I was planning my next move. I went to my study and pulled out all the files on Dr. Miles. There was an address from an old document, a clinic that had closed. But I remembered something. Lisa had mentioned Dr. Miles in one of the recordings. I listened to it again. She said he had a private practice in a nearby town. I had a lead. But as I wrote down the address, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was a woman I didn't recognize, holding a folder. She looked nervous. I opened the door. "Margaret Wilkins," she said. "I'm Dr. Miles's daughter. I need your help." Dr. Miles's daughter stood on my porch, her hands trembling as she held the folder. "My father is a monster," she said, her voice breaking. "I've been gathering evidence against him for years, but I was too scared to come forward. Now, with everything happening, I know it's time." I invited her in, my mind racing. This could be the break I needed to take down the mastermind. But I had to be sure it wasn't a trick. If I trusted her, I could end this. If not, I might walk into a trap. The pressure was high. I had to verify her story quickly. She introduced herself as Emily Miles and showed me documents from the folder, photos of her father with known corrupt officials, financial records showing him funding the schemes, and even recordings of him instructing others on how to forge medical documents. He has a network of doctors and lawyers who help him declare seniors incompetent so they can take their assets, she explained. He started small, but it grew. I listened, checking the documents for consistency. They seemed genuine. I called Agent Carter and arranged for Emily to meet with the FBI. She agreed, but she was terrified of her father finding out. "He has people everywhere," she whispered. After she left with Agent Carter, I felt a mix of hope and fear. This was almost over, but Dr. Miles was dangerous. That evening, I was at home, watching the news, when a report came on. Dr. Miles had been arrested at his clinic. The FBI had acted fast based on Emily's evidence. I sighed in relief. It felt like a weight lifted. But then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from David, from prison. "Mum, I heard about Dr. Miles. I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong." I didn't reply. Some wounds are too deep. The next few days were quiet. I focused on my garden and the senior centre, where we expanded the support group. Mrs. Pierce and I worked on a program to educate seniors about their rights. I felt I was making a difference. But one afternoon, I received a visit from Officer Miller. "Margaret, the investigation is wrapping up. Dozens of arrests, and the network is dismantled. You're a hero to many." I smiled, but I knew I wasn't a hero, just someone who refused to be broken. As he left, I noticed a package in my mailbox. It was a small box from Emily Miles. Inside was a thank you note and a key. "This is to my father's safe deposit box," she wrote. "It has more evidence, and I want you to have it for safekeeping." I took the key, wondering what else was there. I decided to go to the bank the next day. But that night, as I slept, I had a dream of David as a boy, laughing in the garden. I woke up with tears in my eyes. The past was gone, but I had a future. In the morning, I went to the bank and opened the safe deposit box. It was full of documents, but on top was a letter addressed to me. It was from Dr. Miles, written before his arrest. "I underestimated you, Margaret," it read. "But know this. For everyone like you, there are 10 who suffer in silence. This fight never ends." I closed the box, knowing he was right. But I had done my part. I returned home, the key now a symbol of a battle won. As I watered my plants, I saw a new bloom opening. It was a small, quiet victory, but it was mine. I stood in the bank vault, the cold metal of the safe deposit box sharp under my fingers. Inside, I found stacks of documents, ledgers, photos, and lists of names with amounts next to them. Dr. Miles had kept meticulous records of every senior he had helped defraud, including how much money was stolen and where it went. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. I saw Eleanor Grant's name, Mrs. Gables, and dozens more I didn't recognize. I needed to get this evidence to the authorities to ensure all victims received justice. But doing so meant diving back into the darkness I had just escaped. If I got involved again, I risked my hard-won peace and safety. The pressure was immediate. As I left the bank, I noticed a man in a suit watching me from across the street. He didn't approach, but his presence was a reminder that remnants of the network might still be out there. I drove straight to the FBI office and met with Agent Carter. She reviewed the documents and assured me they would pursue every lead. "This will help us close many cases, Margaret," she said. "But you should step back now. Let us handle it." I nodded, feeling a weight lift. But as I walked to my car, I saw the same man from the bank, now on his phone, glancing my way. I quickened my pace and drove home, checking my mirrors frequently. At home, I sorted through my mail, but my mind was on the documents. That evening, I received a call from Officer Miller. "We've arrested 2 more officials based on the new evidence," he said. "But Margaret, be cautious. Some are still at large." I thanked him and hung up. Later, as I was watering my plants, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was a woman I didn't know, holding a clipboard. I didn't answer. She left a business card in the mailbox. I retrieved it later. "Reporter, Daily Chronicle. Want to tell your story?" I tossed it in the trash. I didn't need fame. I needed peace. But that night, I dreamed of the names in the ledger, their faces pleading for help. I woke up determined to do one more thing, ensure the victims were compensated. The next day, I contacted a lawyer specializing in class action suits for elder fraud. We met, and I provided the evidence. He said it would take time, but justice would be served. As I left his office, I felt a sense of closure. But when I got home, there was a package on my porch, no return address. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single dead flower and a note. "Some secrets are better left buried." My heart raced. Was this a threat from someone still free? I called Ben, and he came over to check for surveillance. He found nothing, but advised me to lay low. I decided to take a trip for a few days, visit an old friend out of state. As I packed, I found the key from Sunny Meadows in my jewelry box. I held it, remembering how far I had come. I put it away and zipped my bag. Just as I was about to leave, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You can't run forever." I deleted it and walked out the door, but I knew I had to face this head-on eventually. The text message haunted me during the drive to my friend's house. "You can't run forever." I knew I had to stop running and confront whatever was left, but I needed to do it without risking my safety. If I ignored it, the threats might escalate. If I engaged, I could be walking into a trap. The pressure was subtle but constant. I felt watched, even on the open road. I arrived at my friend Clara's house in a quiet suburb. She was a widow I had known for years, and she welcomed me warmly. Over tea, I told her everything that had happened. She listened, her eyes wide with shock. "You've been through so much, Margaret," she said. "But you're safe here." I hoped so. But that night, I saw a car slowly drive past her house multiple times. I didn't sleep well. The next morning, I decided to call Agent Carter and report the threat. She said they were monitoring the situation, but advised me to stay put for now. I felt trapped, even in this safe haven. I wanted to find out who was behind the threats and put an end to it for good. But how? I had no leads. Later, Clara and I went to the local grocery store. As we shopped, I noticed a man following us through the aisles. He was the same one from the bank. I pretended not to see him and alerted store security. They approached him, but he left quickly without incident. This was getting too close. Back at Clara's, I received an email from the class action lawyer. He said the case was progressing, and several victims had already been contacted. That gave me hope. But then, another email popped up. This one, anonymous. Stop the lawsuit, or else. It included a photo of my house from yesterday. They knew I was gone, but they were watching my home. I realized I couldn't hide forever. I needed to return and face this. I thanked Clara and drove back home, my hands tight on the wheel. When I arrived, my house was untouched, but there was an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a photo of me at Clara's house, with a red X over my face. The message was clear. They could reach me anywhere. I called Officer Miller, and he sent a patrol car to watch my house that night. As I tried to relax, my phone rang. It was David, calling from prison. "Mum, I heard about the threats," he said, his voice shaky. "I think I know who it is. There was a guy, Victor's enforcer, who never got caught. His name is Leo. He's dangerous." My blood ran cold. David gave me a description, and it matched the man I had seen. Now I had a name. But why was David helping me? He said he wanted to make amends. I didn't know if I could believe him, but I had to act. I contacted Agent Carter with the name, and she said they would issue a bolo for Leo. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard a noise outside, a twig snapping. I peered through the window and saw a shadow moving near my garden. I called 911, but by the time police arrived, whoever it was had vanished. I was safe for now, but Leo was still out there, and he knew where I lived. The shadow in my garden left me shaken. I knew Leo was still targeting me, and I had to help the authorities catch him before he struck. I aimed to provide any information I could without putting myself in direct danger. If I failed, he might harm me or someone else. The pressure was intense. Every sound made me jump, and I slept with a phone by my bed. The next morning, I met with Officer Miller and Agent Carter at the police station. I gave them David's description of Leo and any details I remembered from seeing him. They showed me a photo lineup, and I identified Leo immediately. "He's been involved in several cases of intimidation," Agent Carter said. "We have warrants out for him, but he's elusive." I felt a bit better knowing they were on it, but I still had to be vigilant. On my way home, I stopped at the senior center to check on things. Mrs. Pierce was glad to see me and updated me on the support group. Several members had received compensation thanks to the class action suit. It felt good to see some positive outcomes. As I was leaving, I saw a man loitering near the parking lot. It was Leo. He saw me and started walking toward me. I quickly got in my car and locked the doors. He knocked on my window, his face grim. "We need to talk," he said. I shook my head and drove away, my heart pounding. I called Officer Miller, and he said they would send units to the area. When I got home, I found my front door slightly open again. I entered cautiously, but nothing was taken. On my kitchen table was a note. "I just want the money David owes, $50,000, and I disappear." So that was it. He was after David's debt, but I had no intention of paying. I called Agent Carter, and she advised me to set up a meeting with Leo under surveillance. It was risky, but it might be the only way to catch him. I agreed, and they arranged for a controlled exchange at a public place. The next day, I went to a crowded park with a bag of fake money. Leo was there, watching from a distance. As he approached, police moved in and arrested him. He didn't resist, but he glared at me as they took him away. "This isn't over," he muttered. But for now, he was in custody. I felt a surge of relief. Back home, I received a call from the prison. David had been attacked by another inmate and was in the infirmary. He wanted to see me. I didn't know if I should go, but I felt a pull. I decided to visit him, not for his sake, but for my own closure. At the prison, David looked pale and bruised. "I'm sorry, Mum," he said, tears in his eyes. "I was greedy and stupid. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I regret it." I looked at him, my son, broken and remorseful. I told him I forgave him, but that I couldn't have him in my life anymore. It was the hardest thing I ever said, but I knew it was necessary for my peace. As I left, I felt a chapter closing, but there was still one thing left to do. Driving home from the prison, I felt a mix of sadness and liberation. Forgiving David had lifted a weight, but I knew I needed to fully reclaim my life. I now wanted to focus on the future and help others without being drawn back into the past. If I didn't, I might never find true peace. The pressure was gone, but the memories lingered. When I arrived home, I saw a package from the class action lawyer. Inside was a check, a settlement from the lawsuit for my own sufferings, along with a note thanking me for my courage. I decided to donate most of it to the Senior Centre's education program. The next day, I volunteered at the centre, leading a workshop on recognizing financial fraud. Seeing the attendees nod and take notes filled me with purpose. Afterward, Mrs. Pierce pulled me aside. "Margaret, there's a woman who wants to meet you. Her name is Sarah. She's the daughter of one of the victims." I agreed to talk to her. Sarah was young and earnest, and she thanked me for helping her mother get justice. "Because of you, my mum can stay in her home," she said. I felt a deep satisfaction. But as I was leaving, I noticed a familiar car parked nearby. It was Lisa's. She got out and approached me hesitantly. "Mum, I know I have no right, but I wanted to apologize in person," she said. "I'm getting divorced from David, and I've started therapy. I'm trying to be a better person." I accepted her apology, but kept my distance. Some bridges are too burned to rebuild. That evening, I sorted through old photos in my attic. I found pictures of David as a child, laughing and carefree. I allowed myself to grieve for the son I lost, but also to cherish the good memories. I boxed up the photos and put them away, not out of anger, but to make space for new beginnings. The next morning, I received a letter from Henry and his wife Clara. They had moved to a retirement community in another state and were doing well. They thanked me for my bravery and included a photo of them in their garden. It warmed my heart. I realized that while I had faced great evil, I had also found great goodness in people like them. As I tended my own garden that afternoon, I noticed a new rosebush had bloomed, a vibrant red, full of life. It reminded me that after every winter, spring comes. I made a decision. I would write a book about my experience, not for fame, but to educate others. I started outlining it that night, my pen moving steadily across the paper. But as I wrote, my phone buzzed with a news alert. "Leo escapes custody during transfer." My blood ran cold. He was free again, and I knew he might come for me. I called Agent Carter, and she assured me they were on it. I hung up, my hand trembling. I had thought it was over, but perhaps the fight never truly ends. The news of Leo's escape sent a shiver down my spine, but I refused to let fear rule me again. I had come too far to be intimidated. I wanted to live my life fully, despite the risks, and to find peace even with uncertainty. If I cowered now, I would undo all the progress I had made. The pressure was real, but I felt stronger than ever. I increased my security measures, but I didn't hide. I continued my volunteer work, wrote my book, and tended my garden. Days turned into weeks, and there was no sign of Leo. Agent Carter updated me that they had leads, but hadn't captured him yet. I learned to live with the caution without letting it consume me. One sunny afternoon, I was at the senior center, hosting a tea party for the support group. We laughed and shared stories, and I felt a sense of community I had never known before. Mrs. Gable was there, her spirits high, and she thanked me for giving her hope. As I served cookies, I realized that this was what mattered: helping each other, building connections. After the party, I went home and sat on my porch, watching the sunset. The colors painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. I thought about all I had been through: the betrayal, the fear, the fight, and I knew it had shaped me into someone resilient and compassionate. My phone rang. It was Mr. Evans. "Margaret, I have good news. The court has permanently sealed your assets, and David's debts have been absolved since Leo's arrest exposed the illegal lending. You're completely free and clear." I thanked him, feeling a final knot loosen in my chest. That night, I finished the first draft of my book. I titled it A Quiet Strength, and it was my story, but also a guide for others. I knew it would help people, and that was enough. The next morning, I woke early and went to my garden. The roses were in full bloom, and the air was fresh. I knelt to weed, my hands in the soil, and I felt a profound peace. This was my home, my sanctuary, and no one could take it from me again. Later, I received a letter from the district attorney's office. Leo had been caught in a neighboring state and was back in custody, facing additional charges. This time, it felt truly over. I smiled and filed the letter away. Now, in the quiet of my home, I water my plants, write in my journal, and enjoy the simple pleasures. I have friends, purpose, and peace. The past is behind me, and the future is mine to cherish. I am not just a survivor, I am a thriver. And as I sit here, watching the birds at the feeder, I know that I have finally found my happy ending.